Is there a second? Is there any discussion? No, proceed to vote. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. All right, we'll call this meeting to order and have the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, well, welcome, everybody. It's Valentine's Day. I can feel the love in the room. Okay. Let's see, presentations. I have none on my list here. Public hearings. Check that off. Are there any adjustments to the agenda? Check that off. Citizen comments. Seth, would you present during citizen comments? Are you going to talk about something tonight?
Oh, well, there is an article, an item under correspondence.
Yeah, that, would you talk about that during citizen comments?
Whichever.
Just for format,
Whichever is your pleasure.
please.
Oh, shall I
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Seth Paul, President, as you don't know. I think this is related, well, I hope this is related to the correspondence that I've recently actually discussed with Jan a little bit, because it was missed on January 14th meeting or something like that. It was a strange agenda thing. It had been on the agenda. The subject is a letter I wrote to the select board on November 14th. Basically, asking to revisit the issue of the 970 Main Street situation, for lack of a better term. And it's informed by a couple of things, which I'd like to speak to. And maybe I'll say those first. I have a very strong interest in this town. I've been here for almost 15 years. I have a couple of businesses here. I'm an investor, as you know, active political person. So many committees, chaired several. I'm interested. I'm a community member. And as I've shared with Jan recently, I'm missing that. It's something I enjoy. It's something I think is important for citizens to do if they feel inclined. And I think it's gone a little bit awry. So that's sort of my personal background in writing the letter on November 14th and discussing with you. The letter of the 14th specifically, which is the correspondence item, I think springs, in my understanding or impression, from a series of miscommunications. And I wish Stan was here because he could corroborate some of this for us. He has a detailed record, as does Max. Has actually been a little bit involved tangentially with timelines and things. But I think the principal concern I have is based on what I've heard from the board over several meetings about the removal of 970 Main Street's rear L. And I'm sure you all read the correspondence. Was that there are two separate items. And it became clear to me that over our conversations in this room, some members of the board, at least, didn't appreciate the fact that there were two legally separate items for the dangerous building, the nominal dangerous building violation. One was back in 2020 or something. The other was in the fall of 19. The second was in the fall of 2021. And the timelines between the two aren't really related, either structurally or legally. And I'm sure that Stan would confirm this for you. The written record is very clear that the two notice of violation are not connected. The first L was, the first third of the L was removed back in, I can't remember the timeline, the fall of 2019 or something like that. And with the permission of the CEO, who unfortunately isn't here tonight, we agreed that the other 2/3 would have to come down, and it would. There was never any question about that. And there was no further correspondence, as I detailed in my letter. There's no issue that I was aware of until the fall of 2021 I think it was, when I was completing the subsequent demolition of the 2/3, which it surprised me. An action was raised, I think dated November 3rd, if I'm not mistaken, by which time basically the whole L was gone. But I was cited for another dangerous building citation, not related to the first one, no reference, no relationship, nothing. And I think I assume it might have been confusion about the timeline of those two things to lead one of you to mention that I was thumbing my nose at the town, which I certainly was not. My communication has been extremely copious, both by text and letter, with Stan about everything I've documented in that letter. Stan doesn't disagree, to my knowledge, with any of it. And then subsequently to the letter of completion on, I think it was December 15th of 2021, when we were done with the L. It was gone, Stan blessed it, he took pictures, everything was fine. Out of seemingly nowhere, another complaint came up in the spring, in March, I think, of 2022, I guess it was, about debris in the cellar hole, which frankly, I never really understood. As I described, I tried to explain it and remediate it. No citation was made to me about it. It was brought up in this room when I was absent because of some legal stuff with my daughter. So I wasn't aware of it or able to respond at the time. I did subsequently. I think that's the history of the situation. You all know me fairly well. I think I'm a pretty straight shooter. It was not my intention to violate the ordinances or state law for dangerous buildings. I did my best to remediate the situation. And finally, I'll say, for reasons I'm not clear about, as I said in the last couple of paragraphs of my letter, there does seem to be some unevenness in the enforcement of actions like this in this town historically. While you guys were discussing my situation at 970 Main Street, another, I would argue, much more serious complaint went on for more than a year. The state DPW got involved. We solved my November 21 problem in something like 42 days, completely, according to the record by the CEO. Other things go on for years and don't get addressed, and that just doesn't seem very fair. So I'm asking you to revisit the situation, maybe not necessarily tonight. I have been assessed a warrant tax burden that you guys voted on to enforce the penalty, which you first voted on, then cut in half, and then raised back up to the full fine, as you're acutely aware. I would just like to try to come up with a reset for this. It's not productive for any of us. I bought that building basically to try to save it so it didn't fall down. We never intended to do much with it other than sell it. It's not a project of our type. I will mention also, it might be of interest to you, we have in the last recent history sold all of our property in Bath, and this is my family company, in Augusta, our 3 families, to try to focus here in Walboro. Because as you know, I'm interested in the village, continuing that development, and I want to be on a good footing to do that. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. That's pretty much, I think, all I have to say. Unless there's questions.
Okay. Seth, thank you very much for your comments. Sure appreciate them. And are there any other comments from the attendees this evening? Yes, sir.
Vale, Gilbert Lane. I wanted to follow up on 2 things from the last time I was here. First of all, the next day, Bill Maxwell called me and wanted to let me know that the plaque that I made mention of in the building, the Historical Society took possession of that some years ago, and he said he was concerned. He didn't want people to think that I didn't know what I was talking about. I said there's a lot of people who have that opinion and probably not going to avoid that. So anyway, that's been taken care of by the Historical Society. I would like to follow up on the appropriate means of continuing the conversation about parking on School Street. And when things get posted, how they get posted, how to make that really the entrance to School Street safer, because I think the critical issue is cars parked as you're turning in. And I don't know the method of it, but I'd like to work with the town and see if there's a way to maybe,
So people are currently doing that?
yes.
Okay.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. Should I sit down? I think we're done.
Yeah.
I didn't know. That was
It's okay. So anyway, I didn't want to I know one of the other residents spoke about that, and I think it's a continuing issue, and there's probably some not drastic steps we could take to fix that.
I can talk to the chief and to John Daigle about that,
Okay, whatever works.
because we do have a current ordinance that there is no parking on School Street.
Really? And I will say I was surprised the other night when there was a full house at the Waldo. There wasn't a single car on School Street that night. As we're coming up the road, like, oh my God, we're gonna slalom. There was not one car there then.
Yeah, no,
But, I mean, the winter makes it a particular issue, but I think even out of winter, if you're coming around that, there's not a lot of room there. And if cars are parked between there, it's difficult. Anyway, just wanted to raise that, keep that.
I will talk to John Daigle and to Chief Lash.
Just a, Mr. Chairman, if I may, it has been suggested, because there is an ordinance that does say no parking on School Street, that to make it clear, it might be useful to have a sign or two.
Well, that's some sort of signage.
no
I think
parking.
It'd be great if
Yeah.
that's actually what, that's great. I don't want to infringe on the, certain time, maybe it's appropriate. There's also still a sign that says public parking pointing up School Street, and that's going to be obsolete pretty quick. But anyway, that's, just wanted to continue that conversation. Thank you.
Jerry, did you have anything you want to talk about? Okay.
Yes.
All right. Well, then we'll move on to select board comments.
I have a couple. I just want to raise a point we are all aware of, is I'm concerned about the future of the Conservation Commission. I know Will's been working on that and hopefully finding some folks who are interested in carrying the flag. That's an important group in town, and I know we've had some issues with people being able to continue the work. We have set the date, I think, for Oktoberfest 2023, September 30th, with October 1st as being a rain day. And that's all I've got.
Jan Minzy.
Happy Valentine's Day. That's all I have to say.
A group of few words tonight. Okay. Will?
I don't have anything tonight.
All right. I don't have much other than Willie Wong stopped by today, and he's looking for a model of the General Ames ship, like that one. And well, he stopped by the American Legion. That's where I was this morning, and they have one upstairs, but it's in a plastic case, fairly significant case. But he's looking at it because he's gonna use that as part of his graphics during the next summer's festivities. So just to kind of keep you posted on that.
Did he show you what it's going to look like?
Yes.
It is
On his phone
amazing.
the other day, yeah.
You can hold it up on your phone and you can see a ship. So you could go down to Pine Street Landing, stand there, and you'll see where the ship would have been in the river.
Wow.
Very cool. Very cool stuff he's doing.
I can't do that with my phone.
Well, I think you can do it with any phone. You have to, I'll have to show you. There's going to be a way to do it. He's going to come up with
Yeah.
it. He's amazing.
Okay, town manager's report.
Just a couple of things. Brian Seitz from the VOA wanted me to wish you a happy Valentine's Day. And also they would like to do 1 to 2 community forums with our community, and they wanted you to give some thought as to how you would like them to conduct those forums, to talk about designs, take resident comments. They just didn't know if you had any thoughts on how you would like them done. Time of day, when would you like it at a select board meeting?
When are we most likely to get people in here to join in the conversation?
So I thought about that. The last time we've done our community forums, we did them we did at least one we did them in the morning.
Yeah,
Morning seems to be great. I was going to make the suggestion, at least have one of them in the morning and have food. People like food.
when you did the community forums, people showed up.
People showed up. So I thought that might be at least one in the morning and then one in the evening, like at 6 o'clock. And I didn't know if you thought here was a better venue, or maybe I thought that, like at the library.
The other thing you did was issue invitations to folks to come. And I'm wondering, I mean, how do we do that without?
Well,
making people
yeah, I
feel
mean, I
bad
think
they
this
didn't
is
get
something we
invitation,
just have to
but-
promote.
Yeah.
But that was just, he just wanted to know, because they've gotten some really good feedback. Max did a really nice job of putting together like a little synopsis of what's going on and putting it out. And we've got some good feedback from that about potentially saving arches and things like that. And I also did, because we talked about this with the Hofstas house, is architectural salvage. And we are currently taking pictures so that we can send out pictures to some of these architectural salvage firms of what they could salvage beforehand, in both the Hofstas house and 80 Gray. So I think that will be really useful too. So I'll suggest one morning and one night here, if that's okay with you guys.
Sounds good.
Thank you for doing that.
Not a problem. I also wanted to point out, since November, our Community Navigator program has provided some type of heating assistance to 51 families in Waldeboro, totaling a worth of over $22,000. That's a lot of help. In just the last 2 weeks, 22 of those families have been helped. So I just wanted to put that out there. There was a post this weekend on Facebook that there was no more heating assistance for the town of Waldeboro, and that was a inaccurate post. There's a lot of layers of assistance that Karen Ann can direct people to, so it's not just from KV-CAP or CHIP or the Community Energy Fund. A lot of times it's a very layered approach. And we're very proud of what we've done in Lincoln County through a lot of these organizations is their wraparound services. So we share our information so that people can get things quicker maybe than they have in the past. And it's been really wonderful to just see what that program has been able to do. And I just wanted to make sure everybody knew that if you need help, contact our Community Navigator. The cupboards are not bare. We're here.
Okay.
I think. Oh, the only other thing I had for you would be a potential action item. As you know, we're into the budget. We are very much into the budget this year. And you're going to be getting your budget packet soon. One of the proposals that will be up for consideration during the budget committee is the potential need for per diem firefighters. And the budget committee has had some questions. So I thought what would be really good is before we get to that part, to really weed out what information we want and what information we need, we put together a committee of 2 members of the budget committee, 2 members of the select board, 2 2 members of the fire department, a resident, and it would be great to have some type of fire background because that's what we're going to be talking about. Just to get together and go over things with the chief and, a couple of his members and get where their heads are at and what type of information we really need to really truly analyze this decision. And I had some thoughts that might be the best way to go. I talked with Paul, Chief Smeltzer, about that yesterday. He was on board with that. But I think that would be a really good exercise because you're never going to get the level of, when we're having our budget committee meetings, we normally devote 2 to a night. I just think that this would help really streamline the process. So I was just going to ask you for permission to gather those folks together. I do have an idea of, I know Bill Maxwell and John Blodgett have been on the fire department. Kyle Sanderson did a report and has access to a lot of other reports. I would just need 2 select board members to also serve.
Well, I'd make the motion that authorizes you to form the committee. And if you're looking for volunteers, I'd volunteer unless someone else wants to do it.
I need 2 of you.
I'll do it.
That's true.
And we were going to include a department head, and I would suggest John Daigle because of his years of service. He has a lot of background and information and fun things like that. Okay.
So there is a motion on
It's
the
a
floor.
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion? Now proceed to vote. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carried, unanimous. All right. Okay, is there a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? If not, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. It takes us down to new business, 10.1, annual letter to DMR to retain the town's rights to river herring.
One of our favorite times of the year. This is for the alewives, that we will retain our rights to potentially harvest our alewives. And just a little update, we will be setting up constructing the, I guess they're called baffles, and setting up our fish counter that Max was able to get with a grant so that we can count the alewives this year. So that's going to be really exciting.
Cool.
And I know that the Davis Fish Fund and a couple of other organizations are working very hard to get the Fishway opened up all the way to Washington Pond. And Abden, what was the last, when we had that meeting, it was what, $1.2 million? A
Yeah, there was a lot
$1.2 million
more.
investment into having the,
Obstructions, there was a lot more obstructions than we realized after it was surveyed.
but we have, I can't think of her name, it escapes me now, but we have a wonderful organization helping. And we're hoping that we're going to receive a nice big grant and that we can start removing these obstructions. But it was, like I said, it was much more entailed than originally thought. So we're excited about that.
So do you need a motion on the letter to exercise our rights?
Yes.
I'd make the motion that we authorize our town manager to write, sign that letter.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor? Raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Okay, food pantry budget request for 2024 town warrant.
So if you will recall, the food pantry was doing a petition to put a request for funding in the amount of $16,000 on the 2024 warrant. And the action that's required from you tonight is simply to place it on the town warrant. I don't see anybody here from the food pantry. Are they online? I can't. No. But Pam, they met the requirements, the signature requirements. So it's just a formality for you to be able to place it on the agenda, on the town warrant in June.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? No, proceed to vote. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Quarry Hill Grant.
That's a
10.3.
max item.
Hello, everyone. So it says Quarry Hill grants, but it's actually a few grants. Two of these are from Maine Outdoor Heritage Fund, which is what funded the fish counter from last year. So there's two grants. One is for a drone for Mondomic River monitoring and enforcement. This was something for Justin Hills and the Shellfish Committee asked for. It's just to purchase a drone and to train Justin so that he can use the drone to find some areas and improve the water quality in the Potomac. We are seeking $6,475, and the town will provide a $2,775 match, just so we have the best score. It was already approved through DMR for the pre-application, so now we're doing a formal submission. Should I just go through each one, or should I go through all of them and then get the motion from the select board on?
Can I make ask a question about the drone? Right, I think you ought to handle them separately because they're totally different, but.
Okay.
Is the funding from the town side going to come from the Shellfish Committee?
Shellfish Committee,
Emergency services.
Emergency Services Departments, they're all kicking in. He's going to be trained on it. It's primarily for shellfish, but it's going to be also used for potentially for fire and for the police department.
And you can use it
If
to-
somebody's lost,
Yep.
you can use it to search. But the Shellfish Committee is the ones that initiated this. We're taking the lead on it. I asked Max to see if he could write a grant, and he did.
And it's an enforcement assist as well?
I
If it's needed or
don't
less-
think,
No.
no,
So.
No.
not- okay.
Well, not,
It's working with state agencies that are getting complaints.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
that if we need it, if we have issues like with the river, if we've got beaver dams or something like that, we can find them a lot easier than having to walk 15 miles to.
in order to really use it for any type of enforcement, that is a very complicated
Yes.
issue, one that
That's
Okay.
we were not
why it's
interested in
not gonna be a
pursuing.
police department
I
thing.
get it.
It's not a police department tool.
Right. It's,
Thanks.
but it would show you if some areas were being overdug or something like that, or, and also for some of those non-source point pollution things that we just can't see when you're on the river, but you might see over the river. Water quality.
Our quality improvements. And so far, we have 3 letters of partnership, one from the Maine Marine Patrol, one from the District Game Warden, and then one from Georges River Regional Shellfish Management. Which is nice to have. So the motion would just be the town allowing me to submit the application, and I don't know, do we have to say that
Shellfish Committee will give
the money?
money towards it.
I'd make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion on this? No, proceed to vote. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carried.
So then the next 2 grants are for Quarry Hill. One is the Maine Outdoor Heritage Fund, and then the other is Maine Mountain Biking Trail. And both grants aim to create multi-use trails up at the Quarry Hill, up at the sort of north end area, just after the blueberry fields, just to make maybe 2 or 3 trails, depending on how much money we can get. And it's as it sounds, the trails would be used for pedestrians as well as mountain biking with some low impact, with a focus on low impact recreation. I've spoken with Midcoast Conservancy, who's providing a letter of partnership on this, since they also have the conservation easement for the property. And Midcoast New England Mountain Bike Association, who are going to be providing volunteers to help on getting these trails repaired. We would be seeking $26,000 from the Maine Outdoor Heritage Fund. Up to $17,000 will come from the mountain biking trail grant that I said, whatever it was. And then I'd have to redo the calculation, but over $3,000, maybe $5,000 would be in-kind match from the volunteers at the mountain biking group. So the town doesn't have to put up a match.
So-
If all goes well. So again, it's just approval on submitting the 2 grants.
Make that motion. Oh,
I just had a question. Do we have Waldeboro residents involved in the mountain biking part of this?
Yeah, Leslie, who was on the Conservation Commission and was the chair, she stepped down, but this is still one of her big passion projects that she still is being involved in.
That's cool. That'll get people into town.
Yep.
Yeah.
I make that motion to have him submit for these grants.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there any more discussion?
There is one more grant. At the Shellfish meeting the other night, we have a mini grant that we could apply for the Shellfish Committee, up to $5,000, and we could use that. If you would allow us to apply for that, we could apply that also to the cost of the drone. I think that was what the Shellfish Committee had requested. So we will prepare that. We don't know if we'll get it, but if that's okay with you, we will submit that too. On behalf of the Shellfish Committee.
Do we need to amend the motion or?
No, I didn't even, this was a mini grant that I wasn't even.
Oh,
aware of.
okay.
He wasn't even aware of
All right.
until 20 minutes before the meeting.
Okay.
We need to vote on this one
Yeah.
first.
Yeah, I
Right,
know on it.
exactly.
I keep forgetting that. I'm sorry. I interrupted.
Okay, any other discussion? If not, proceed to vote. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carried.
Now, do you want to present the other one?
He doesn't know about it.
Oh, okay.
That was
All right.
my,
Oh, okay.
I had given it to Justin this morning and I thought Justin and Max were going to talk about it this afternoon. But at the Shellfish meeting 2 Thursdays ago, we have till March 10th to apply for it's a DMR mini Shellfish grant, and Glenn's sitting out there.
More discussion for Shellfish.
Oh, okay, okay. All right.
Although I think we're cut for time. I don't-
I would just need their approval. I can get it on the 28th. That's fine.
Okay.
I'm all set. Thanks, everyone.
Okay. We're all done with 10.4. 10.4. All right, we'll move on with, Let's come-
10.4.
excuse me.
We need 10.4.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry.
We need to vote on that? you mean,
Well,
or-
we have to discuss the moratorium. We're done with
Oh,
10.3.
okay. All right. I jumped ahead one. Sorry about that. All right. 10.4, discussion on moratorium for aquaculture leases. And we were handed out a page on that.
And our vice chairman of our Shellfish Committee is here, who is just in the back, dying to come up and speak about it.
I
Glenn
find
Melvin.
permission to do that from this group. I had forgotten how boring this place is on these meetings. I make a motion, we start serving alcohol. This place is dead. My God, help us. This is awful. No wonder nobody watches it. My God. All right, I'd like to lay down the groundwork of what we're gonna talk about, where we're at. It's kind of a unique situation. Before I do, I'd like to thank Bob Butler for coming to our last Shellfish meeting. That's a step out of the way. He didn't need to do that. He could sit here tonight and try to absorb everything that we're gonna talk about. And I hope we can make it as simplistic as we can so that everybody can understand what's going on. It's gonna be a major state issue and already is. And as usual, Waldeboro is in the middle of it. So, I'd like to be-
Waldeboro was leading the charge. man.
yes, and well, yeah,
Yeah.
kinda. All right, here's my personal view on it, and I'm hoping I lay out enough groundwork so we can step forward with it. I feel the state of Maine has lost its respect for Maine fishermen. They do not respect our heritage, they do not respect our landscape or our history. They are taking our fishing grounds, our open fishing grounds for windmills
and handing them over to aquaculture as well. These are grounds we are fishing now that we won't be able to fish there. It doesn't matter how long you fish there. It doesn't matter if your dad fished there, and it doesn't matter if his dad fished there. The state has a better plan for these grounds because they are smarter than we are. We are just fishermen. We will be told to move. Ever seen a lobsterman go somewhere else? That usually doesn't work out for them real well. They usually don't have many traps left. The DMR actually has employees with aquaculture applications in for Waldeboro. That would take our fishing grounds, whether it's scallop grounds, whether it's shellfish grounds, whether it's mussel ground, whatever's being harvested in the wild will no longer be allowed there. And the DMR employees have applications in. The DMR, I contacted them, does not have a problem with this. This looks real good, doesn't it? DMR giving our fishing grounds to the DMR. That's nice. That's good stuff. The state is even peddling our town's fishing grounds for aquaculture throughout the world. They're doing it behind the backs of town officials. We may not even know what the state is peddling for aquaculture to come to Waldeboro and apply for our applications. Everything I have told you will be backed up and can be backed up by the literature, which will all be handed out, and presentations down the road. I feel Waldeboro Shellfish is forced to try to protect itself. Aquaculture could destroy us as it has already destroyed Damariscotta. Damariscotta is a aquaculture town. They thrive in aquaculture. They don't have any clams left. The chair of the Shellfish Committee digs Waldeboro. Interesting thought. Oyster filters for food 5 to 10 times more water than a clam does. Down the road, you're going to hear, as was already presented at the shellfish meeting, how large of a water is taken up by a oyster farm. And when I say taken up, I mean by the food that's in it. This will all be presented on the 28th. I'm here to lay out the groundwork so that we understand what's coming and where we are. In my opinion, our only shot is a moratorium to ban private aquaculture in Waldeboro. Private meaning we still leave avenues open for Waldeboro shellfish or any conservation methods that the town feels is worth pursuing. If we don't save our clam flats now, we may not be able to. The aquaculture stuff that goes in for 10, 20, up to 40 years. I've heard beyond that. You will lose that open area fishing grounds. They're gone. You're not going to get them back. You're not going to get a second chance. And the state is handing this stuff out like candy. Please support us in our effort to survive. That's all I'm asking from you guys. Take a vote, stand behind us. Maybe you'll have to wait till the next group gets here. I appreciate your time and everything you've done. Now, everything I just read off here was just the, because I'm trying to keep my thoughts straight and I'm old and that doesn't happen, I get drifty. So if anybody wants a copy of this or the whole 9 yards, there is a company that was formed about 3 years ago. It's actually a foundation. It's called the Protect Maine's Fisheries Heritage Foundation. This heritage was formed to fight for Maine fishermen, wild Maine fishermen. They fight against aquaculture, windmills, anything that threatens the wild fisheries of Maine. The CEO is Crystal Canning. I've been in contact with her for over 6 months. There are towns up and down the coast that have already signed on to changing the moratorium to cut down on the size of aquaculture in their town. Some people have said we don't want it bigger than 5 acres. Some people have gone different sizes. The smallest amount so far was 0.5. It's a half an acre. Oh man, really? Sorry.
You're on a computer, but you don't know how to run a phone.
Yeah, oh, that's awful. It really is awful. So this is what this group does. This group has found a loophole in Maine law that allows towns to control their waters. It's referred to as home rule. If you'd like to know more about this, go to the Protect Maine's Fishing Heritage Foundation website. Go down the page. The home rule has been addressed to the DMR, which you will read on there and do more about it. The DMR at this point in time is just watching. Back to where I was before the phone call came. People have cut down on allotments of the size of aquaculture that they allowed in their town. I picked our number that I think we should represent. It's 0. We do not want aquaculture of any size in our town. We are the largest shellfish, yeah, I know, shellfish, yeah, I got it first time, shellfish industry in the state. Oldenburg's the biggest, we have the most people, we produce the most clams. And we're willing to risk this. The other neat thing about aquaculture is when you open up a farm, you're actually bringing in an invasive species. That's why you're opening the farm, because they're not there naturally. So you don't know what happens around them. You don't know what they do to the river. When you pack this amount of people, as it appears, oysters are doing statewide. We're not the only ones doing this. We're not the only ones following this. Go to the website. I think there's 8 other towns that are signed on. We are the ones leading the way because we are the first ones to say, no, we are going 0 tolerance. So this is our move forward. This is our moratorium. We had a gentleman here, spoke to the Shellfish Committee. His name was John Lewis. He ran aquaculture for DMR. He was head of the aquaculture for DMR for 23 years. He retired 3 years ago. He is the consultant for Protect Maine's Fisheries against aquaculture. Give this some thought, spread the word along. I'll gladly take questions for everybody and anybody that I can and answer at this point in time at the level that we're at. Thoughts? See, I'm dry, I could use a drink. Where's the fun Coke? Bob!
At first, I want to say that that was one of the most interesting meetings I have ever been to. I learned a pile of stuff. I had no idea that oysters were, I won't call them predators, but could eliminate the clam population of a river.
Yes.
By virtue of the fact that they filter so much water and eat what comes in and puts it into their systems. So I thought that was really interesting. The other thing I found very disturbing, and John Lewis confirmed this, that people in the DMR have a conflict of interest that they're not acknowledging, and that DMR isn't doing anything about eliminating it. I think that's bad policy. It's certainly bad politics. So I'm very interested in talking about this moratorium with you and with your committee. I think it's important. And I would point out, you're not talking about necessarily eliminating aquaculture on land.
Correct.
You're focusing on water.
We have, aquaculture has a place. To me, it's very small. We have AU here, American Unagi. That's an aquaculture site. When they first came to shellfish, we said, no, you are aquaculture. We put up the blinders first. We learned more about what they do. They are 5 miles from our tidal water. They don't take any of our clam flats. They don't even take water from the river. They actually recycle most of their water and reuse it again. That type of aquaculture, we were willing to accept. Because it in no way that we could see, and the deals we made with AU would influence our shellfish beds, or we'd shut it down. We test the water that comes out of AU. I see the test results. The only way I could figure they could hurt us is if they polluted clam flats that we had. And I spent many hours with the owner of AU, Sarah. And that I made sure that it would not hurt us in any way. I have the potential to, and did actually tell her I'll shut it down myself if I have to. Yeah, we will not give up Waldeboro shellfish industry. It's not as long as I'm on the committee. I appreciate you being there, Bob. That's how you know the stuff that's there. I wish more people had showed up. I know the word went out. It's really to see that type of stuff. I talked to a guy today who digs South Bristol. And he told me he had actually, let me back up just a little bit because there again, I get drifty. The edge of it all, mate, rather a cove has clams, comes and goes. That's just everything. All the shores have clams. You can go anywhere on the shores, there's clams. There's no shores that don't have clams. For some reason, they like the shores. I don't know what the gig is with it, but they seem to always be there. Whether we have it in the mud or not is a different situation. I talked to a guy today. He said he in South Bristol, which is on the Damariscotta River. He's walked the shores behind the oyster farms. They're dead. There's not a clam. That's odd. That's odd. Well, I'm not willing to risk it. You can plead all you want. You can say this, you can say that. We have so much given to us by Mother Nature. Having a man-made situation come in so a very small group could make a lot of money would be insanity on the part of this town.
I think part of what people have heard is aquaculture creates jobs. I think your approach that the Shellfish Committee has is we have 154 families that make their living off of the river. You have elvers, you have pogies, you have lobsters, you have whatever else that you want to have in that river. And it's not just the oysters that was pointed out, it was the fish farms. They had a discussion about the fish farms also that night. And I think everybody says, oh, well, this will happen, but you're not talking about the jobs that aquaculture might displace. And in Waldeboro, that's a very real number for us.
This isn't, it goes far beyond that, Julie, the jobs issue. It's a heritage.
Well,
It's
I
generations of
agree.
fishing that you want to shut down.
I totally agree, but I think that when people hear aquaculture, I'm just trying to explain that. I think when people hear aquaculture, that's been pushed from the state level down so that people are immune to hearing it or saying, oh, why would this be a bad thing? It's a bad thing because it's 100, just in shellfishing alone in Waldeboro, 154 families depend on it. That's what they do.
Not all the world sees aquaculture in that light. I'm a big tuna guy. I like tuna fish. I like mine with Hellman's and relish. I've
You
seen
place
who
it in
made
order or
faces.
something?
I was gonna say who made it. I
You
wanna
place
see
it in
who
order
made
or something?
faces. And my favorite one's Bumblebee. I just like the stuff and the whole 9 yards. And they sell tuna. That's what they do for a living. I got a can right here. And they got writing on it. They got colors on it and the whole 9 yards. And they sell tuna. They fish like we do.
Right.
Okay, that's pretty cool. The biggest writing on the can is actually on the top. I don't know if you've ever noticed it. To sell their product, what are they so proud of?
Wild caught.
They're wild caught. That's what they're the proudest of the whole goddamn can. So aquaculture is not the answer to everything. It may not be the answer to anything. I don't think it's any answer that Waldeboro should pursue. Thoughts? Before I go get a drink? I told you I was gonna. It wasn't like you're surprised.
Just so you know too, their attorney, that this organization uses also is our attorney. So if you authorize tonight, if you want to support what the Shellfish Committee is asking of you, we could have the moratorium prepared for your next meeting on the 28th.
I just want to say a little bit too is Glenn didn't touch on is the projects that we've done in the river with the floats, with the clam floats of trying to recruit seed. These oysters could potentially just wipe that out. So all the efforts the Shellfish Committee is doing could be potentially wiped out by putting oyster farms in the river. It would just be a waste of our time if this is gonna happen. And have an aquaculture. We are essentially, as a town, an aquaculture caretaker, I guess I would say. We're trying to enhance the river, but we're not enhancing it for a specific company. It's the whole town. So that's the biggest thing, is what we're trying to protect, is everybody in the town, and not giving it to a core group of people to take over.
Well, it sounds like we need to be very protective of this home rule part of this. I mean, that, what it means is, that's Waldeboro's land.
That's what,
And that's, yes,
that's what they will be if it ever went to court. And this company is very confident that there was a law that was put in, I believe, November 1969.
And if DMR does take towns to court, this group is willing to fight for the towns
And
for nothing, for nothing.
we will pay for it.
so for a vote of confidence.
One of the interesting things that came up during that meeting was, yeah, the DMR has authority over leasing. We can't fight that unless you change the law. But they don't have authority over regulating those leases. That's something the town can do. And yeah, we can pin down the details of how those leases operate through our home rule process. So the moratorium, I think, is called for because we need the time to think about an ordinance that interfaces the DMR's leasing activities and that protects the river and our clammers and other things we do in the river.
Yeah, and I think that's important. We have to put, there's elvers, they pogie, there's lobsters, you know, you're protecting, it's the health of the river.
Yeah.
And Damariscotta, they've made their decision and that's great. They grow wonderful oysters in the Damariscotta River. But Waldeboro is very unique, and I think it's really important that we do protect what we have as a resource for our fishermen, but also for the enjoyment of the river for everybody else, and as a recreational river too.
Yep.
I mean, there's probably no more beautiful spot than the Madomic in all the state of Maine, and that should be protected. But again, it's not just oysters. There's also the fish farm. And if you read, a gentleman did an article who used to work for the Boston Globe, was it?
Yeah.
And, you know, he through public means got the emails between the Maine Economic Development Committee and this company of where they were going to site potential fish farms. And the mouth of the Madomic was one of those in Friendship. And that's the kind of stuff is when you have, well, here's a potential site that's in one of the biggest, and you know, you look at Friendship, they're our neighbor, that could affect even just what we were trying to do tonight, which is reestablish our alewives to Washington Pond, you know? So there's a lot of layers to this. And I think on the 28th, you'll find the presentation really interesting. So if you are going to make a motion tonight, it would be for us to prepare a moratorium in conjunction with our attorney.
I'd make the motion and I'd request that after it's prepared, that the Shellfish Committee have first whack at it and recommend a process to this board about going forward.
So can the Shellfish Committee have a special meeting to review that?
As I'm concerned,
Okay,
Chair will probably fight me. He usually does, but I don't listen to him, so it's no big deal.
no, I didn't think so.
Okay, we've got a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? No, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carried.
I should also point out that this was discussed at our Economic Development Committee meeting,
Yeah, was,
and they did support
they did.
this. It was the Monday after your Shellfish Committee meeting.
Supported what?
They did support the moratorium,
Moratorium.
our own Economic Development Committee here in
I'm
Waldeboro.
through. I don't see how you can't, I guess I'm not,
Max, you just hand up.
I don't see the alternative.
Sorry, Ruben had two questions that I just now saw. He's wondering how can regular residents help what you're talking about?
I call the town manager, show your support for Waldeboro Shellfish.
And the second was if you could repeat the webpage that people can go to.
Sure, this is cool stuff. People are watching us?
Yeah,
No kidding?
You're-
I almost fell asleep in the back row in 5 minutes and somebody watched. us.
nobody's as entertaining as you, Glenn.
Oh, yeah, that's a nice way of saying you're weird.
But I thought you were very festive with your kiss for Valentine's Day outfit. I thought you did great.
And the red
I
hat?
never thought that, to tell you the truth. It was the one that wasn't dirty. I wished I was as brilliant as you give me credit for. The Protect Maine's Fishing Heritage Foundation is kind of nicknamed the PMFHF, which is obviously just an abbreviation. It's worth reading. Go into you'll see the towns on the front page. They've already signed on. If you go down through, you'll see home rule. You'll see, if you look at the media part of it, which is also on the front page, you'll see where the state is going behind towns' backs and peddling our fishing grounds. Our wild fishing grounds, they're peddling them. It'll explain it all. It was, like, as Julie said, it was discovered, thank God, by somebody. And it's good to be in Maine, huh? Sometimes, in some ways,
It's always good to be in Maine. It's
Just
the way
gotta
life
fight.
should be.
you just always have to fight. Or maybe it's just me.
No,
Maybe it's just me that always has to fight.
no,
It's
it's,
the clam digger in me.
but just so you know too, it's not just happening in Maine, you know, when I talk to the fine friends that are fishermen in New Jersey, it's a similar fight,
They're doing it too?
similar fight.
They're losing the battle, though.
They are.
Julie, did you go to that meeting in Brunswick the other day?
I did.
You did. Did,
Yeah, it was really interesting.
Thoughts before you guys throw me out of here or call PD? Anybody from the press, I'm out of date with everybody. You can contact me, Julie, give me my contact info if you have any questions or any paperwork that I have, because I have all the paperwork behind it, so. I give this lady, because I know she's from the press,
It's
My rant.
Elizabeth.
so she'll shred that on the way out.
Yeah, she'll be fine.
She'll frame it.
I love her already. Well, I'm going home for on the code, guys, I'm sorry.
Max is coming with you, so just take care of him, okay?
Okay, Chris Blackman applied for the rec committee, and Ann Lehman for the EDC committee. Bob and I met with them. Very fine applicants. Bob, did you want to say anything about?
Chris is a counselor at the high school. He's been a counselor in Rockland, next door in Warren, I think. He's been in the profession for something like 30 years. And I asked him, I said, what's the difference, Chris, between kids today and kids, when I was growing up centuries ago? And he said, it was interesting, the response, and that's going to cause some controversy, but he said, the willingness to take responsibility for what you do. And I thought that was very insightful and interesting to hear from somebody who has his perspective. Ann Lehman, man, she's got a master's in economics. She's taught at Harvard. She writes at Harvard. She's a brilliant woman. She's got some great ideas. She wrote her master's thesis about a town in Montana, Missoula, Montana, which was going through the same kind of thing Waldeboro is going through. They were putting malls up outside town. Well, what do you do to the downtown? How does that evolve when all of that competition is being built outside the central commercial district? And so it was interesting to talk to her. And I think she brings a lot to the table, and she's excited about being on the committee too. So I would make the motion that we appoint Ann Lehman to the EDC committee and that we appoint Chris Blackman to the Recreation Department.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Not proceed to vote. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Okay, is there any old business? Agenda items for next meeting.
We must have a presentation coming for the 20th.
Yeah, we have a presentation coming up on the 28th. That would be the moratorium discussion on aquaculture.
Did we want to do an executive on goals, or is that a public meeting? Just to finish up what Jan brought up.
I would do executive. If we want, we can continue it in public.
Okay.
So we'll do a personnel.
In addition, we've got several budget meetings ahead of us, so make sure your calendars are clear.
You should be getting your budget books next week. And I'll just prepare everybody for it. Just like every other business and household, we're experiencing inflation. The town is experiencing inflation, just like every other business and household across the country. But specifically, the transfer station this year with the increase in tipping fees and the costs to haul the garbage and the demo, that's going to be a significant increase. It's going to be a good discussions, I think, during budget committee of what we can do and what we should do. But a lot of it is stuff that we just can't help. You know, when your car parts are up and truck parts are up 15%, and, you know, we're calling our vendors and they're saying the increase is, you know, probably going to be 15%. And like we all know, with the tipping fees and the transportation fees are just up there. We also have the, like we put together the committee for the discussion on the per diem firefighters. Also the potential purchase of the solar farm up at the transfer station. So there's a lot of interesting items that are going to be talked about in those budget meetings. So please come, and those budget books will be out to the committee members hopefully next week.
I just want to give a shout out to Julie. You were at that shellfish committee at 6 o'clock at night, spending time getting to know the issues. You attended the MRC meeting this afternoon.
Yeah.
You've been working like mad on this budget. I just thank you for.
I have to tell you, there's a lot going on, and it's important that we be present at those things. The budget's really important, and I just want to say too that I give a shout out to Peg Tynan, our finance director. She does an excellent job. All of the department heads were just wonderful. You know, Derek Booker, our EMS chief, is in his first year and has done a phenomenal job. I mean, it'll be a pleasure to sit down and do the EMS budget this year. And that's really never been a pleasure in the past, but we worked really hard to get those agreements in place and really turn around our thinking and how we addressed that situation. And I'm sure we'll give that same attention to the fire department request for per diems. You know, we just hired a new police officer that hopefully at the next meeting we can swear in publicly. We're still down a position. We're down a position in Public Works. You know, so there's positions that are still open, but it's just been hard to really, you know, get people and attract them, just like every other business. In main facing, we're facing that ability to engage, recruit, and retain individuals. So, budget season, it's the best time of the year.
Okay, our next meeting is on the 28th. Is there a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.